The morning fog clung to the cobblestone streets of Lyon like a shroud, hiding the movements of those who dared to defy the occupation. Marie Dubois pressed her back against the cold stone wall of the cathedral, her breath forming small clouds in the crisp October air of 1943. In her worn leather satchel lay documents that could save dozens of lives or cost her own. At 24, Marie had already lived through 3 years of German occupation in France. What had begun as a quiet life teaching children in a small village school had transformed into something far more dangerous. The transformation started the day she witnessed soldiers dragging her neighbor, Monsieur Cohen, from his home simply because he was Jewish. The image of his terrified wife clutching their infant son had burned itself into her memory, igniting a fire that no amount of fear could extinguish. The resistance network Marie had joined called itself Les Hirondelles, the Swallows, named for birds that migrate to freedom. Led by a mysterious figure known only as Le Corbeau, the Raven, the group specialized in creating false identification papers and smuggling endangered civilians to safety. Marie's role was crucial. As a teacher, she had access to school records and could create believable backstories for the false identities they crafted. Today's mission was particularly perilous. Intelligence had reached them that the Gestapo planned a massive roundup in the Jewish quarter within 48 hours. 3 families, the Bernsteins, the Levys, and the Rosenbergs, needed immediate evacuation. Marie carried their new identity papers, each document meticulously forged to withstand scrutiny. The Bernsteins would become the Catholic family Bertrand, complete with baptismal certificates. The Levys would transform into the Protestant family Laurent, and the Rosenbergs would assume the identity of the war widow Rousseau and her children. As Marie moved through the narrow alleyways, she practiced the cover story she would use if stopped. She was delivering lesson plans to a colleague who lived near the Jewish quarter. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the strap of her satchel, knowing that discovery would mean not only her death, but the doom of the families counting on her. The first stop was a small bakery where Samuel Bernstein worked before the restrictions forced him into hiding. Marie entered through the back door, using the coded knock. 2 short, 3 long, 1 short. The door opened to reveal a thin man with prematurely gray hair and eyes that had seen too much suffering. "The swallows are flying south," Marie whispered the code phrase. "And they carry spring in their wings," Samuel replied, completing the recognition sequence. Marie quickly handed him the documents for his family. "You are now Henri Bertrand, a carpenter from Marseille. Your wife is Claire, and your son is Jacques. Memorize these details tonight. Tomorrow at dawn, meet at the old mill outside town. From there, you'll be taken to a safe house near the Swiss border." Samuel's hands shook as he examined the papers. The forgery was perfect, complete with official stamps and signatures that had taken weeks to replicate. "How can we ever thank you?" He asked, his voice breaking with emotion. "By surviving," Marie replied firmly. "By living to tell the world what happened here." The second delivery proved more challenging. The Levy family was hiding in the basement of a bombed church on the outskirts of the city. As Marie approached, she noticed unusual activity. 2 German patrol cars parked near the town square, their occupants scanning the streets with suspicious eyes. Her heart pounded as she forced herself to walk casually, maintaining the appearance of a teacher on an innocent errand. She reached the church without incident and found Father Auguste, an elderly priest who had been secretly sheltering refugees for months. His weathered face bore the stress of constant fear, but his resolve remained unshaken. "They're in the crypt," he whispered, leading Marie down stone steps worn smooth by centuries of faithful footsteps. In the dim candlelight, she could see the Levy family. Parents David and Rachel with their twin daughters, Sarah and Ruth, both around 8 years old. The children clung to their mother, their wide eyes reflecting the terror that had become their constant companion. Marie knelt beside them, speaking softly. "I have your new names and papers. You are now the Laurent family. David, you are Philippe Laurent, a mechanic from Toulon. Rachel, you are Marie Laurent. We share a name now, which will help you remember. Sarah, you are Sylvie, And Ruth, you are Sophie. The parents nodded solemnly, but the children seemed confused by this strange game where they had to pretend to be other people. Rachel Levy held her daughters close, whispering reassurances in their ears, while memorizing the details that could mean the difference between life and death. As Marie prepared to leave for her final delivery to the Rosenberg family, Father Auguste grabbed her arm gently. Child, the patrols have increased today. Something feels wrong. Perhaps you should wait until tomorrow. Marie shook her head. Tomorrow may be too late. If our intelligence is correct, the roundup begins at dawn. These families must reach the safe house tonight. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her shoulders as she stepped back into the foggy streets. 3 families' lives hung in the balance, and time was running out. As she made her way toward the final destination, Marie couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat. Every footstep echoed with potential danger. The fog that had once provided cover now felt suffocating, and Marie realized that this night would test not only her courage but the very foundations of the resistance network that had become her second family. The documents in her satchel represented more than false identities. They represented hope in a world gone mad, and she would deliver them no matter the cost. The narrow street leading to the Rosenberg safe house stretched before Marie like a gauntlet. Her intuition proved correct when she spotted 2 Gestapo officers questioning an elderly woman near the corner. Their harsh German voices cut through the evening air, demanding to see papers and asking pointed questions about suspicious activity in the neighborhood. Marie ducked into a doorway, her heart hammering against her ribs. The final set of documents for the Rosenberg family felt like they weighed 100 pounds in her satchel. She had to reach them tonight. By morning, it would be too late. Taking a deep breath, she decided to circle around through the cemetery behind the old church, a route that would add 15 dangerous minutes to her journey but might avoid the patrol. The cemetery was a maze of weathered headstones and overgrown paths. Marie moved carefully between the graves, using the moonlight filtering through bare tree branches to guide her way. As she navigated around a large stone angel, she heard voices approaching from the main path. Freezing behind the monument, she listened as 2 German soldiers passed within mere feet of her hiding spot. The sweep begins at 0500 hours, one said in heavily accented French, clearly meant to intimidate any hidden listeners. Every building in sectors 4 and 7 will be searched. No one escapes this time. The confirmation of their intelligence chilled Marie to the bone. Sector 7 included the building where the Rosenberg family was hiding. She had to reach them within the next few hours, or they would walk directly into the trap. After the soldiers passed, Marie continued through the cemetery and emerged near the back of a row of damaged buildings. The Rosenbergs were hiding in the basement of number 47, a partially collapsed apartment building that had been abandoned after a bombing raid 6 months earlier. The building's facade was scarred by shrapnel, and several windows were boarded up, making it appear completely uninhabitable. Marie approached the predetermined entrance, a damaged cellar door hidden behind a pile of rubble. She gave the coded knock and waited, listening for any sign that she had been followed. After what felt like an eternity, the door creaked open to reveal Victor Rosenberg, a former university professor whose academic life had been destroyed by racial laws. "Thank God you've come," Victor whispered urgently. "We heard increased activity in the streets today. Is something happening?" Marie quickly explained about the planned roundup as she handed him the forged papers. "You are now Madame Rousseau, a war widow from Dijon. Your story is that your husband died fighting in 1940, and you're traveling with your children to stay with relatives in the countryside." Victor's wife, Anna, emerged from the shadows holding their 10-year-old son, Eli. The boy had been forced to grow up too quickly, his childhood innocence replaced by the necessity of absolute silence and constant fear. Anna examined the papers with the careful attention of someone whose life depended on every detail. "Eli becomes Jean Rousseau," Marie continued, kneeling to speak directly to the boy. "Can you remember that name?" The child nodded solemnly. "Jean Rousseau. My father died fighting the enemy. We're going to stay with my aunt in the country." Marie was amazed by the boy's composure. Children in occupied France learned early that survival depended on playing roles perfectly. "Very good. You must remember, if anyone asks, you are Catholic. You attend Mass every Sunday with your mother. Your favorite saint is Joan of Arc. As the family memorized their new identities, Marie heard a disturbing sound. Vehicles approaching the main street. Through a crack in the boarded window, she could see the headlights of military trucks moving slowly through the neighborhood. The net was tightening faster than expected. We need to leave now, Marie said urgently. The original plan was to move you at dawn. But they're starting early. Can you be ready in 5 minutes? Anna Rosenberg quickly gathered their few precious possessions. A small bag containing photographs, a prayer book, and some jewelry that might be traded for food or shelter. Everything else that had once defined their comfortable middle-class life had been stripped away by laws that declared them less than human. Marie led them through a route she had memorized during weeks of careful reconnaissance. They moved through bombed-out buildings, abandoned lots, and forgotten alleyways, always staying in the shadows. The family followed silently, trusting completely in this young teacher who had become their lifeline to freedom. At the rendezvous point, an old mill on the outskirts of town, they met the other families Marie had contacted earlier. The Bernsteins and the Levys were already there, along with Jean-Baptiste, a resistance operative who would guide them to the next safe house. Jean-Baptiste was a weathered man in his 50s, who had been smuggling people across borders since the occupation began. We have a problem, Jean-Baptiste informed Marie quietly. Our usual route has been compromised. German patrols discovered one of our safe houses yesterday. We'll have to use the mountain path, but it's much more dangerous, especially with children. The mountain route meant traveling on foot through rough terrain for nearly 20 kilometers, then hiding in caves until contact could be made with Swiss border guards, who were sympathetic to refugees. It was a journey that would test the endurance of adults and could be nearly impossible for young children. Marie looked at the 3 families, 15 people including 6 children, all depending on decisions made in the next few minutes. The youngest was little Sophie Levy, barely 7 years old, who was already exhausted from the stress of hiding and running. How long will the mountain route take? Marie asked. 2 days if the weather holds, Jean-Baptiste replied. 3 if we encounter patrols, or if the children can't maintain the pace. A new complication arose when they heard the distant sound of dogs barking, tracking dogs used by German patrols. The sound was still far away, but it was moving in their direction. Someone had either betrayed them, or the Germans had discovered evidence of their movement through the town. They're on to us, Jean-Baptiste said grimly. We need to split up. Smaller groups have a better chance. Marie made a quick decision. Take the Bernsteins and Levys on the mountain route. I'll take the Rosenbergs through the river valley. We know those paths. And it might confuse the dogs. That's not the plan, Jean-Baptiste protested. You're not trained for this kind of escort mission. Plans change, Marie replied firmly. These people need to survive. And splitting up doubles our chances. As they prepared to separate, Anna Rosenberg grabbed Marie's hand. Why are you doing this? You could live safely. You could pretend none of this is happening. Marie thought of Monsieur Cohen being dragged from his home, of the frightened faces of children who had to learn new names to stay alive, of the world she wanted to help rebuild when this nightmare ended. Because if we don't protect each other, we lose everything that makes us human. The barking of the tracking dogs grew louder, and time for conversation ended. Marie led the Rosenberg family into the dark forest, not knowing that their greatest test still lay ahead, or that the choices made in the next few hours would echo through their lives forever. The river valley route that Marie chose was treacherous in the darkness. Ancient deer paths wound between thick stands of pine trees, and the sound of rushing water from the mountain stream helped mask their footsteps. But the same water that concealed their movement also created muddy, slippery terrain that made travel with a 10-year-old boy incredibly challenging. After 2 hours of careful progress, they reached a shepherd's hut that Marie's resistance network had used before as a temporary shelter. The small stone building was hidden in a grove of trees and had been abandoned since the owner fled to England in 1940. Marie checked carefully for signs that German patrols had discovered it, but the camouflaged entrance remained undisturbed. Inside, the family collapsed from exhaustion and fear. Young Eli had pushed himself far beyond normal limits, never once complaining despite the cuts on his hands from brambles and the mud that soaked through his worn shoes. Anna held him close while Victor studied their forged papers by candlelight, memorizing every detail of their new identities. "How much further?" Anna asked quietly, trying to keep hope in her voice for her son's sake. 8 kilometers to the border," Marie replied. "But the most dangerous part is still ahead. We have to cross open meadowland where there's no cover." Marie's knowledge of this route came from childhood summers, spent visiting her grandmother, who lived near the Swiss border. She knew every hidden path, every stream crossing, every cave that could provide shelter. What she hadn't expected was how different those familiar landscapes would feel when traversed in fear, carrying the weight of human lives. As dawn approached, they prepared for the final push to freedom. Marie had planned to cross the exposed meadow in the pre-dawn darkness, but the sound of aircraft engines forced them to reconsider. German reconnaissance planes were conducting early morning sweeps, searching for any movement in the border region. "We wait until the planes pass," Marie decided. "Then we move quickly." But waiting proved dangerous. Around 7 in the morning, they heard voices approaching the hut. German soldiers conducting a systematic search of every building in the valley. Marie quickly extinguished the candle and motioned for the family to hide behind stacked firewood in the back of the small building. Through gaps in the stone walls, they watched 3 soldiers approach. Marie's hand instinctively moved to the small pistol Jean-Baptiste had given her. She had never fired a gun at another person. But she would not let this family be captured after coming so far. The soldiers entered the hut casually, clearly not expecting to find anyone. One commented in German about using the place for a rest break. Marie's heart stopped when she realized they intended to stay. The family couldn't remain hidden behind the firewood for hours without young Eli making some sound. Fortune intervened in an unexpected way. The soldiers' radio crackled with urgent orders. A resistance safe house had been discovered in another valley, and all available units were needed for a massive operation. The soldiers grumbled about their interrupted break but quickly departed. After waiting another hour to ensure they were truly gone, Marie made the decision to attempt the border crossing in daylight. They had no choice. Staying any longer increased the chances of discovery, and their food and water were nearly exhausted. The final stretch required crossing a meadow approximately 1 kilometer wide. Swiss border guards had been known to provide assistance to refugees, but reaching their territory meant traversing land that German patrols monitored constantly. Marie studied the landscape carefully, identifying the safest route between scattered stands of trees. "We run from tree to tree," she explained. "If we're spotted, don't stop running, no matter what happens." The Swiss border is marked by a stone fence on the far side of the meadow. Victor looked at his wife and son. "We've come this far together. Whatever happens, we face it together." The first sprint across open ground was terrifying. They reached a small grove of birch trees without incident, but Marie could see German observation posts on the hills overlooking the valley. Soldiers with binoculars were methodically scanning the entire area. During the second sprint, disaster nearly struck. Eli tripped and fell hard, scraping his knee and crying out in pain before his mother could reach him. The sound echoed across the quiet valley, and Marie saw movement at the nearest German observation post. "They've spotted us," Marie said urgently. "We have to reach the border now." The final 400 meters became a desperate race. Behind them, they could hear vehicles starting up, and dogs barking as German forces mobilized to intercept them. Victor carried Eli on his back while Anna ran beside them, her dress torn and muddy but her determination unbroken. Marie had never run so fast in her life. Her legs burned, and her lungs felt ready to burst, but the stone fence marking Swiss territory grew larger with each step. When they were 50 meters away, gunshots rang out behind them. German soldiers firing warning shots and shouting orders to stop. They reached the fence as Swiss border guards emerged from their posts, weapons drawn but pointed at the pursuing Germans, rather than the refugees. The stone barrier that represented freedom was only waist-high, easily climbed, but the symbolic meaning was immense. As Victor lifted his family over the fence, Anna turned to Marie. "Come with us. You've saved our lives, now save your own." Marie shook her head, even as German vehicles approached. "Others are still in danger back there. My work isn't finished. The Swiss guards provided covering fire as Marie disappeared back into the forest, using paths only she knew to evade the frustrated German pursuit. Hours later, exhausted and alone, she made her way back toward Lyon, already planning her next mission. 3 months later, Marie received a letter through resistance channels. It came from a Swiss refugee camp, where the Rosenberg family was safely awaiting passage to America. Eli had written it himself in careful handwriting. Dear Marie, we are safe because of you. Papa teaches other refugees now. Mama helps with the children. I am learning English for America. I will always remember that you showed us how brave people help each other. When I grow up, I want to help people the way you helped us. Thank you for giving us tomorrow. Marie kept the letter hidden in her school books as she continued her double life, teaching children by day and smuggling families to freedom by night. She never learned that her actions that October week saved not just 3 families, but dozens of their descendants who would be born in freedom rather than perishing in camps. The war eventually ended, and Marie returned to her quiet life as a teacher. She never spoke publicly about her resistance activities, believing that heroes were the families who found courage to trust strangers with their lives, not the strangers who simply couldn't turn away from their suffering. Decades later, when historians documented the French resistance, they found scattered references to Les Hirondelles and their successful rescue operations. But the full story of Marie Dubois and the October night that changed 6 lives forever remained hidden in classified files and fading memories, a testament to the ordinary people who chose to act extraordinarily when faced with humanity's darkest hour.